Here we are then. All roads lead to tonight. The entire season comes down to this game. Can we mix it with and defeat a team who know how to lift this very trophy? Can Big Ange back up his bullish belief that he can show us we've been wrong to doubt him with a grade A performance to blow away a good German side? I'll be going through all the possibilities in this preview episode. Meanwhile, Spurs are again being linked with an England international centre-back playing in Serie A, and I'll discuss more of my thoughts on those reported talks between the club hierarchy and Crystal Palace's Oliver Glasner, all on today's daily Tottenham Hotspur news. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Please do give this video a like if you're watching on YouTube. Also, you can listen to this on the podcast platforms, be that Spotify or Apple Podcast. Just go over, put in the Spurred On podcast to the search engine and give me a subscribe or a follow there. But let's get started with some transfer news. And Spurs again being linked with AC Milan's and former Chelsea centre-back Fikayo Tomori. Milan value him at £26 million. They were actually quite keen to get rid of him in the January window, and Tottenham were keen to take him in that kind of last-minute scramble to find a centre-half. When we went for Mark Gahey, we went for Tomori, but ended up with Kevin Danso, who, by the way, I think has fitted in really well at Spurs, and it is a shame that he picked up a hamstring injury. Not like us to pick up a hamstring injury, is it? But apparently still links with Tomori. I like Tomori. I thought he was excellent when AC Milan came to Spurs and knocked us out of the Champions League under Conte. I think he's kind of underrated, kind of out of sight, out of mind over there in Serie A. So he could do a job. And at £26 million, very cheap for an English centre-half. Be interesting to see what happens in the summer. Realistically, once again, I think this is a link being driven by the fact that Tottenham are succession planning for Christian Romero's potential departure. However, as far as I'm concerned, Christian Romero needs to really up his game if he's going to find his way out of Tottenham towards one of the Madrid clubs, because Daniel Levy will be asking for an extreme sum of money for him to leave. And those Madrid clubs will just send him videos of Romero's form this season, say, how can you be asking so much money for a player who, A, has barely played any games because of fitness, and B, who loses his concentration so regularly. He even lost his concentration when playing for Argentina 2 weeks ago against Brazil. He had a great game all in all, but just one time in the game, he passed it straight to, I think it was Mateus Cunha, who slotted it home. And with such a huge game coming up tonight, Tottenham need Romero to be absolutely on his best form. I thought he was pretty decent at the weekend. His passing is absolutely second to none when it comes to ball-playing centre-backs. Okay, as I mentioned yesterday in my video with Ash Matic from Spurs Kings TV, if you haven't checked it out, do. I'm going to look to do more collabs with Ash. He's so good, really knows his tactics, really knows his Spurs. So make sure you check out that video from yesterday if you haven't already. But just as we were recording, the breaking news came out that Tottenham had open contact with Oliver Glasner's representatives as a potential replacement for Big Ange Postecoglou. Apparently, RB Leipzig also want Glasner to come in this summer. Be interesting to see whether he has any kind of compensation clause in his deal with Crystal Palace. There were reports last summer, in fact, just towards the end of the season before last summer, that Bayern Munich were keen to get Oliver Glasner in. And in the end, obviously, they went with Vincent Kompany. And Glasner apparently did want to make that move to Bayern Munich. Not a surprise, but Crystal Palace would not let him out of his contract so soon after he'd started there and had such an amazing first half of the season with Crystal Palace. He did, of course, have a difficult start to this season, but it shows, once again, that when his players really get to grips with what he's asking of them, he does an amazing job with them. And I've been saying, I said it on yesterday's video with Ash, I've been saying for a while, I'm surprised that Spurs hadn't been linked with Glasner. And it makes sense to me. He won the Europa League with Eintracht Frankfurt, a club who are renowned as a cup team in Germany, a club who have been sniffing there and thereabouts around the Champions League places, but hadn't quite followed it through. And then he took them to that Europa League victory. Now, obviously Spurs still in with a chance of winning the Europa League this season, but if we could get a manager in who maybe was slightly less harsh when it comes to with man management and with dealing with the press than a Jose Mourinho and an Oliver Glasner, who has an ability to be pragmatic when needed, but also can open it out into attacking football, then that is the kind of manager that I think, if Big Ange Postecoglou were to go, and again, I'll caveat, I don't want Ange to leave if he wins this Europa League. You know, he's still got this amazing chance to prove himself as an absolute legend at this club. But if you know, realistically, if we don't win that Europa League and we finish 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, then I'm afraid Daniel Levy will pull the trigger. And in that instance, I don't think Oliver Glasner would be a bad option. Guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. What do you think of Oliver Glasner? Let's start a debate in those comments about that. Okay, let's get on to tonight's game. How are you feeling about it? What do you think? For me, you know, there's a bit of a worry because Eintracht Frankfurt are a counter-attacking team. They look to hit on the break with extreme pace out wide and, you know, one or two passes getting them overloads. And that is something Spurs suffer from. There's no doubt that Frankfurt are not as strong now as they were in the first half of the season. I think the stats are that they were kind of second or third in the league during the first half of the season. Then they sold Omar Mamouche to Man City, and then they've been 8th or 9th in the Bundesliga in the second half of the season. They'd recently been on a half-decent run of games, beat Stuttgart, although that was with Stuttgart going down to 10 men, but then they lost at the weekend against Wolfsburg. But that could be... actually, it might have been Werder Bremen, apologies. But that could have been because they were looking forward to this game. You know, they might have dropped some of their percentages with this game coming up, as Spurs have definitely done recently. I think it's going to be a difficult game. I do think Spurs need a lead to take to Germany, but that doesn't mean it's going to be easy by any means tonight. The atmosphere, the crowd are going to have a huge part to play, and if you're going to that game, just be as raucous as you can. Get behind the team. We need to start making the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium a fortress during these European games. And I was at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium for the Manchester City Champions League quarter-final first leg, and Tottenham fans just made that the loudest atmosphere I've ever heard, and Man City could not deal with it, and we won that game 1-0, and as a result just about snuck our way through in the second leg at the Etihad Stadium through much gnashing of teeth. So we need an atmosphere like that. Ange Postecoglou was asked in his press conference yesterday about the team news. He said, everyone is good from the weekend from a physical standpoint. That's a good place to be for us. There haven't been that many occasions where that's happened this year. So from that point of view, it's good. I second those thoughts. It's good that he's got pretty much an entire squad to pick from, except for, of course, Dragusin and Deki Kulusevski, who are the two who would definitely be in that first team squad. Kevin Danso as well, of course, he's still out as well. He was asked, Ange, about the importance of tomorrow night. He said, I'm not sure how many times this club has been in the quarterfinals of a European competition. Every time you get in there, you don't take it for granted. You've got to make the most of it for sure. And I know that's a little bit of a flippant comment, a bit of a dig, but actually, do you know what? I feel like the Tottenham fan base over the last 10, 15 years, we probably feel like we've been in the quarterfinals of European trophies a lot of times. But you know what? We really haven't. It's only Seville in the UEFA Cup, and that was, under Martin Jol, probably 10, 15 years ago. And then, obviously, the Champions League quarterfinal, as I mentioned, against Man City. So this is our only third. Only our third in probably since 1984. Our third European quarterfinal. So it's absolutely huge. And I'm not suggesting that any of us thought it wasn't a huge game, but it's almost like we're so stuck on the fact that it's all or nothing because the league is so bad, and it's all about kind of big Ange Postecoglou, and can he prove to us that he has the tactical nous to do something huge for the club, and can he kind of back up his comment that he made earlier in the season when he was asked outright in a press conference, will you win a trophy this season? And he just said, well, my experience shows that I've always in the past won a trophy in my second season. Now, a lot of people have taken that as him being arrogant and saying, I'm definitely going to win a trophy this season. He's not being arrogant. He just said, in my past, in my history, I've always won a trophy in my second season. And that's true. So I think we're kind of so stuck on that stuff with Big Ange that almost forgetting how huge a game this actually is for Tottenham Hotspur Football Club as a whole, and how rare we've got into these situations. I mentioned the atmosphere, didn't I? Ange was asked about the atmosphere as well. He said it's hugely important. With every European game you're watching last night or watching tonight, the atmosphere makes a big impact. It's a big part of European football. A lot of teams that have success in Europe are on the back of a really strong home atmosphere. We hope it's the same for us tomorrow. One club who really will ramp up the atmosphere during their home game is Eintracht Frankfurt. They have one of the loudest and most raucous stadiums. So that is another reason why I feel like Tottenham need to take some kind of lead, and ideally a lead of 2 goals or more away from tonight's game. It won't be easy though. But one thing I do think will help us when it comes to next week's away leg, and that's assuming we're still in the tie at that point, is the fact that we did go to Galatasaray earlier this season. We went to Galatasaray with a kind of mishmash of a team with Will Lancashire playing up front, and he actually scored there. So I think the fact that we have faced that kind of atmosphere, we faced Rangers away as well. Like, I'm not suggesting we played well in either of those two games. We didn't. But we got a result at Rangers thanks to an equaliser from Deki Kulusevski. We did lose to Galatasaray with that weakened side, but those experiences should hold us in good stead. But we've got to stay in the tie and definitely, ideally, take a lead with us. Ange was also asked in his press conference, are you confident that the players are still behind you? He said the lads are really keen to bring success to the club and to keep driving the principles of what we started this whole journey with in terms of the football we want to play, and really stick together as they have through the toughest of periods. And hopefully now we've worked our way into position where we can make an impact on our season. So for those people, and listen, I get it. You know, there are a lot of people who support Big Ange, who are backing Big Ange, and that's good. It's subjective. We're all allowed to have different opinions. But for those people who are, you know, in my comments quite a lot saying, you know, that I'm being too harsh on Ange Postecoglou, this is what it comes down to. People have had a go at me about calling it Judgment Day tonight. It really is, because even Ange is saying we've worked our way into a position where we can make an impact on our season. He's piling the pressure on the players and on himself, saying it's this or nothing. It's balls to the wall. It's tonight or bust. And look, if he wins 4-5-0 tonight, an absolute statement performance in the biggest game of our season, then it would turn a lot of people's feelings around again. We'd all be like, hold on, he actually has got his players back, and when it matters with those players playing for him and playing at their highest intensity because it's the Europa League, then they're still definitely with him, and he's still definitely an elite manager. But it's a lot of pressure. It really is. But listen, I hope he's right. And I hope that pressure really comes to the fore and that the players can handle it. Ange was asked on the possibility of winning a trophy to silence those critics. He said, I just think you can't win the argument of convincing people. Even if we win the Europa League, I'm gone anyway. That's just the general sentiment of the people. If you try to use that as a motivation, you're not going to win anyway. It's got to be something more in it for us. For us, what's more important is that we've been through a tough time, but we're still in a position to make an impact. See, he's doubling down on that. I just think there's a real determination to take this opportunity. I hope he's right. One thing I did want to bring up from that, and they were talking about it on the Extra Inch podcast with Nathan and Windy and Bardi, and if you don't listen to that, make sure you do. It's a really excellent podcast. Do you get the feeling, let me know what you think in the comments, but do you get the feeling that Ange basically listens to all the podcasts and reads all of the articles? He seems to know, and they were talking about this and it's true, he seems to know like every narrative that the fans are talking about. And maybe it's the case with all the managers, maybe it's the truth with all the players and all the managers, they read and look at everything, but you kind of say, if you were Ange Postecoglou's wife or family, you'd say, Ange, don't read it, mate, don't listen to it. Listen, you've been through a bad run. You're still in the job. You've got a chance to turn it round. Don't listen to all this negativity. That's just my instinct, but maybe he revels in it and maybe he likes to try and use it to fight. He talks so much about being a fighter and a scrapper, and maybe he uses it to bounce off. And like I said, I really hope it comes through tonight. He said, in fact, relevantly, never through this struggle have I lost the will to fight for what I think is the right thing to do, and I'll continue to do that. And by that, I think he's talking again about attacking football. I have no problem with the attacking football. I love the attacking football. I want more of the Ange ball, more of the attacking football. But I also want us to mark the fucking back post and stop conceding easy, samey goals. That's all I want. I want a middle ground. Then he was asked, and this is where he got a little bit angry in his press conference, he was asked about that penalty incident versus Southampton, and he used it as an example of how there's an agenda against Spurs and how there's no winning mentality within Tottenham and the fan base. Of course, if you don't remember the penalty incident being, we got a penalty in the last second of the game. Brennan Johnson had scored 2 goals already. He won the penalty, but then it was given to Matthias Tell by Christian Romero, who was the captain on the pitch at the time, and said this. And he was in a mood about it. He was pretty sarcastic. He said, we scored, we won. It's incredible. It's the one bit, literally turning gold into crap when it's Tottenham, he said. He said, if we're 2-1 up in the Europa League and we get a penalty late on, I want our best penalty taker to take it. So what he's saying there is basically he can't believe that it's become such a story that Matthias Tell got the penalty and Brennan Johnson didn't get a chance to complete his hat-trick. And I was thinking it too. I was like, look, who was the best penalty taker on the pitch? And clearly that was Matthias Tell. That's why he got the penalty. And actually, if you look into the stats, Brennan Johnson had missed, I think, 3 of his last 7 penalties for club and country. So Ange is just saying, why has that become a story? You're acting like we don't know who the best penalty takers are, and it's 2-1 in a game. We didn't know whether Southampton could go up the field and maybe get an equaliser if Brennan Johnson missed that penalty. And Ange is saying everyone in the Tottenham media or the Tottenham fan base is looking for a story, and that was a non-story. So listen, I'll say it, I agree with Ange on that one. And finally, before I go into some stats before tonight, Eintracht Frankfurt manager Dino Topmoller, what a great, brilliant German name that is. And he's doing a decent job at Eintracht. He was asked about Spurs. He said, we're facing one of the favourites for the trophy. We're aware of the individual quality we're facing with the likes of Son, Solanke and lots of other big names. But we've got a team that can compete with Spurs. Listen, we need those big players to really come to the fore tonight. We need Sonny to have his best game of the season. And we need some of the more senior players to really step up. The likes of Maddison, the likes of Bentancur. Mickey van der Ven needs to hit the ground running once again. And of course, Christian Romero and Vicario. We need to show some leadership and some physicality down that spine. We need to embrace the atmosphere from the fans, hit Eintracht Frankfurt hard, but also play smart and not leave wide open gaps for them to counter-attack and damage us with. He did say, didn't he, the Frankfurt manager, that Spurs are one of the favourites for the trophy. And that's true. And that is realistically not because of the form that Tottenham have been on this season, but because the Premier League has so much more money from their broadcast deal than any of the other clubs and countries left in the tournament. But I wouldn't put us as favourites for the trophy at the moment. Okay, before I go into some stats, guys, thank you so much for watching. Do let me know in the comments how you're feeling about tonight. What's your predicted team? What's your predicted score? Please, if you haven't already on YouTube, give this video a like. The more likes we get, the more suggested videos of Spurs fans this goes into their YouTube feed. Also, if you haven't already and you're not already a subscriber, please do press subscribe for daily Tottenham Hotspur news and content. And also, as we get closer to May, we're only about a month away when the transfer window will open, and I'll be doing regular transfer videos for Tottenham and across the Premier League and Europe. Okay, just some match facts and stats before tonight's game. Last time we faced Eintracht Frankfurt, the 22-23 Champions League, we drew 0-0 in Germany and won 3-2 at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. The only previous European knockout meeting between the two clubs was in the 81-82 Cup Winners' Cup quarter-final. Spurs won 2-0 at home before losing 2-1 away in the second leg, but going through on aggregate. Spurs have reached their first major European quarter-final since that Champions League semi-final, which was back in 18-19 against Man City, as I mentioned. This is Eintracht Frankfurt's third Europa League quarter-final. Despite failing to win the first leg of either of their first two, they lost 4-2 to Benfica in 2018-19 and drew 1-1 with Barcelona in 2021-22. They qualified for the semi-finals both times. So that shows, doesn't it, that even if Tottenham win tonight, it is by no means guaranteed that we go through, because they beat Barcelona and Benfica despite not winning their first legs. Eintracht Frankfurt have lost just 2 of their last 23 matches in the Europa League, won 14, drawn 7, and have won 7 of their Europa League games this season. Players under the age of 21 have been involved in 10 Europa League goals for Spurs this season. 6 goals, 4 assists, the most by a team in a season since Bayer Leverkusen in 21-22. Dominic Solanke has been involved in 6 goals in just 361 minutes of Europa League action this season. 2 goals and 4 assists. So he's been in good form in Europe. That's really good news, actually. And maybe it's because he gets a little more space and a little more opportunity to be physical and hold the ball up in Europe. And Eintracht Frankfurt's Hugo Ekitike, who is a very rated player, and lots of talk that he might be coming to the Premier League next season, as with their player Larson in central midfield, who actually is linked with Tottenham. Anyway, Ekitike has been involved in 6 goals in 10 Europa League appearances, 3 goals, 3 assists. Okay, so that's some of the stats. There were also some other Spurs players put out for the press yesterday. Brennan Johnson was one of them. He was asked whether he feels underappreciated. He said, not really, no. Within the team and the staff we have here, it's definitely made clear to me to feel appreciated, and that's all that matters to me, to be honest. My colleagues, the staff and the manager make me feel appreciated. I think the style of play really suits me. All the people in the club are super supportive of what I've achieved this season. Within these walls, I feel really good about it. So a few little sly digs there at the fact that maybe the fan base don't appreciate him enough. He's a finisher, isn't he? He's an elite finisher. Get him into those positions, inside right position, and he'll shoot and finish across to the far left-hand corner. And then at the back post, he's also a good first and second touch crosser for those balls across the front of the box between the keeper and the back four. So he's good at what he does. Listen, I think if Tottenham were having a better season and he'd posted up those numbers, then people would be raving about him. But it's the fact that we've been really poor that means people are concentrating on that he's not maybe involved enough in some of the games. He went on to say, I don't really care about what other people and the critics are saying. I love all the players in the squad and the management staff. We've created a really tight-knit group. Winning the Europa League is something we want to do for each other because we've had some tough times, and there would be no better joy to celebrate it with people than the people who've gone through it. He said, there's a lot of work that goes into the goals that I've scored this season, positionally, the types of finish that I want to improve at. And then finally, as well, Pat Matasar said, I'm focusing on the field and Tottenham. It seems like maybe Pat Matasar has been linked with a move somewhere bigger because he references it. He says, every player dreams of climbing the ladder and playing with the biggest clubs in the world. But as I said, I'm here and I'm totally focused on Tottenham. I love Pat Matasar. I think he has everything in his locker to become an excellent player. But he's just dropped off a little bit in the back end, kind of second half of this season. And he will get more game time, but he needs to I think he needs to try and boss games a bit more and maybe, he's still a young player, but maybe take games by the scruff of the neck and show some leadership. He's been at Spurs a long time now, nearly 3-4 years probably, and we need him to start growing into a senior player. But I like Papsar a lot. I think he can be a really great talent going forward. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching and listening. Really appreciate your support. Like I said, do give this video a like if you haven't already. Do subscribe to the channel. Bottom right-hand corner there should be the subscribe button. And also with tonight, coming up, what are we, about 10 hours away from kickoff. Get behind the boys. Let's hope that we can have an amazing weekend on the back of a huge result and a glory night, and it can turn our season around from something that has felt so negative into something where we can really look forward to potentially going properly deep into this tournament. Come on, you Spurs.